The story began with the cry of a monster echoing from deep inside the forest. A red-haired girl named Laffy easily split the monster in half. However, Laffy was troubled by something. She had a friend named Wraith. When he saw her injured, he poured an elixir on her wound. She scolded him for using such a precious elixir on a small cut, but he didn't understand why she was upset since he could always make more. This alchemist named Wraith was her main problem. Elixir was a medicine that could heal any wound. Only a small fraction of alchemists could make it, and even then they could spend years trying with no guarantee of success. Even if they wanted to buy one, they could work their whole life and still not have enough gold. One day, Laffy wanted to buy an elixir with all her money, but the seller said they only had one, and it was reserved for a noble. She needed it for her sister, but the seller was clear that he was running a business and wouldn't sell it to her. She offered to do anything and started begging, but the seller was not interested. Disappointed, she started walking away. She bumped into a man who could barely walk, and he fainted on her. She asked if he was all right, and his stomach answered with a loud growl. This man was Wraith. When she brought him some food, he thanked her and said he was an alchemist. To show his gratitude, he offered to make her anything she wanted with alchemy. She immediately said an elixir, but then regretted it, thinking if he had something that valuable, he wouldn't have been starving. To her surprise, Wraith agreed and gave her an elixir. She was shocked and asked where he got that, to which he responded that he made it. Laffy checked the elixir if it was real, and according to the color, the magical energy coming off this small bottle that was the same as the one she saw in the shop earlier was real. Laffy offered to pay as much as he wanted in exchange for this elixir. He reminded her that this was a thanks for the bread she bought. She still wanted to do something, so he asked if she could tell him where he could sell potions. Apparently, it was his first time here in the capital. While they were walking, she asked why he wanted to sell potions, and he responded that his wallet was stolen, so he was penniless now. Laffy brought him to the Adventurers Guild, and they entered. Inside the guild, everyone seemed interested in Laffy as she was an S-ranked. Wraith asked if she was famous, and she said that it was inevitable to not be famous when you reach S-rank. They went to the receptionist Amelia, and she greeted Laffy. When Wraith introduced himself, Amelia asked if he was Laffy's boyfriend. Laffy panicked and explained that she just found him on the verge of collapsing earlier and helped him out, making him a little offended as she was denying so forcefully. As for why they were here, Wraith explained that he wanted to sell that and put an elixir on the table. Laffy was shocked once again. There were alchemists out there who spent their entire lives trying to make a single elixir, and now this person just pulled 2 elixir like it was nothing. She got more and more curious to know who this man was. Amelia checked it and confirmed that it was a real elixir. She asked if he was really fine with selling something this valuable to them, and Wraith took out 4 more elixirs, saying that he got plenty of them. Amelia's reaction was so noisy that the whole guild looked at her. Laffy grabbed his arm and dragged him to the exit. She asked what was going on here. Wraith didn't seem to understand what she was saying. He said that they were just elixirs. She asked if he made all of them, and he confirmed her. She said that his alchemy was abnormal. There were plenty of bad guys who would do terrible things to him if they knew what he could do. She told him to not sell his elixirs. Wraith said that even if she said that, he didn't have anything else he could sell right now. Laffy couldn't find any solution, so she decided that he would stay in her house tonight. It was because of her that she couldn't sell his elixirs. Wraith was still happy that he had a place to stay even if it was a girl's house. At Laffy's house, Wraith was amazed by how big her house was. Laffy came with a little girl. She introduced herself as her little sister Sylvia. Laffy wanted to make tea and Sylvia offered to do it, but she stopped her, saying that she needed to rest or her health would get worse. Sylvia silently sat right in front of Wraith while Laffy left there to make some tea. The silence made the situation even more awkward. While Wraith was worried about what he should say, Sylvia thanked him. He wondered why she thanked him, and she explained that he gave an extremely valuable elixir to her sister. He said that her sister helped him out first, so he should be thanking her. Even so, Sylvia wanted to thank him. She said that Laffy always working so hard for her sake. Wraith was a little confused, so she explained that she was doing her best to find a cure for her sickness. Wraith now understood why she seemed so desperate. He said that she had a really good sister, and Sylvia's face glowed while agreeing with him, saying that she was the best sister in the whole world. This made him laugh because Sylvia seemed so adult-like at first. She said that she was only 15. Wraith hoped that she would get better soon, and Sylvia smiled at him. Laffy was listening to them behind the door with a smile on her face. The next day, Wraith decided to make some potions now. Laffy asked the reason, and he responded that she told him to not sell elixirs, so he thought he would make some potions instead. Sylvia asked how long that usually takes. It depends on the potion, but a vial generally takes an hour to make, as Laffy thought. Wraith, however, stated that a medium-quality potion usually takes him a few seconds or so. Laffy grabbed Sylvia and told her to not let him fool her because making a potion in a few seconds was something only an abnormal dumbass like him could do. Sylvia had so many questions in her head while they were arguing. She decided to giggle and said that he was just a strange person. Wraith opened his bag and put out the ingredients. Laffy wanted to watch, which he was okay with it. They stared at him while he closed his eyes and focused on making the potion. He told the words extract, purify, set components, and sublimate, and the potion was done. Just as he said, it happened in the blink of an eye. The technique the two sisters saw during their first time witnessing alchemy was flawless. But to Wraith, alchemy was something he did every day. Having gotten so used to doing it, he had no idea what his skills were worth. The last one he made was a high-quality potion. He wanted to make a medium-quality potion. He was even holding back a bit. But if he could make lots of those, he didn't think he would have to worry about money. Sylvia said that she now understood what her sister was talking about earlier. In the next scene, Wraith and Laffy are at the Adventurers Guild, and Wraith is greeting Amelia most noisily. He apologized to her about yesterday and said that he came to sell something different today. He showed the high-quality potion he made and asked if she would buy it from him. Amelia agreed to buy it, but before that she wanted to ask him about yesterday. Laffy asked if they could leave that for another time. With that, Amelia offered 3 gold coins for 15 high-quality potions. That was a lot more than what he expected. Amelia said that since monsters have been showing up more frequently as of late, they were short on potions right now. Wraith was relieved that he could finally go to an inn. He asked Laffy what she was doing, and she said that she thought it had been a while since she last took a request. There were a lot of different types of requests, such as herb gathering and monster extermination. Other than ones that required fighting, there were also ones for finding lost cats, making potions, and so on. Hearing the details from Laffy, Wraith started to grin as she was regretting her decisions. Wraith decided to register as an adventurer. It looked interesting to him, and they even give awards. Laffy thought about it. If by some coincidence there was a request for elixirs or some other unreasonable request, he might be exposed, so she decided to keep a close eye on him and stop him. Amelia explained to Wraith that he was F-ranked now, and even without doing extermination quests, he could raise his rank to D. Laffy decided to recommend him requests other than alchemy-related ones, but Wraith's first choice was an alchemy-related request. Laffy tried to change his decision by suggesting a cat one, but he didn't seem like he would change his mind. Amelia said that she also didn't think taking this request was a good idea either, because the one who put up this request was eccentric, and no one had been able to complete it so far, so she couldn't recommend this one. However, Wraith didn't listen to either of them and wanted to take that one. Amelia asked if he heard what she said, and he said that he heard it, but it looked interesting. He went to the client's home. He recalled how Laffy was worried about him. He felt obligated to complete this request without incident to put her mind at ease. He opened the door and stated that he had come because of the request. A little girl was there and told him to follow her and he could get started right away. Wraith thought she was helping out here, but she said that she was the one who posted that request and her name was Daisy. She also mentioned that they were about the same age. Wraith apologized for mistaking her for a small kid. She told him to shut up and follow her. They entered a room and Daisy explained that he was going to help her to extract and purify those herbs. The extract was distilling a herb into a liquid containing its effects, and purify was to remove impurities from the liquid produced from the extract. She told him to do as many as he could, and before she left, she told him to do his best to not let him down with an evil smile. Wraith shuddered with the pressure of the request. He started doing it, and his work, both in speed and thoroughness, must have been over 50 times greater than that of a normal alchemist's. After doing it for a while, he wondered if this would be enough, but decided to not rest as she told him to do as many as he could. If he kept going and handily finished his first request, he could get praised by Laffy, and she would understand that he could do these requests by himself, so he continued working. After a while, Daisy noticed that it had been pretty late, so she decided to check if he was slacking off by now. She opened a door while saying that he could take a short break if he wanted. She was stunned by how full the room was. The herbs had been used up and those were made from the ingredients here. She started yelling at him, asking how he could do this much in such a short amount of time. He said that he just used alchemy like normal. Daisy was even angrier now because normally didn't explain how he did all of this so fast. She was yelling at him, ordering him to tell her how he did it. Wraith decided to show it to her, and seeing him extracting and purifying the herbs like it was nothing made Daisy tremble. As Wraith kept acting like it was normal alchemy, she eventually fainted. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on Wraith's lap, wondering why his face was so close. As she realized what position they were in, she slapped his face and yelled at him. She said that this sort of thing should be done with the person you like with a red face. Wraith apologized and explained himself by saying that he would have felt bad if he just left her passed out on the floor like that. Daisy believed him and then took a look at the room to confirm that she was not dreaming. She said that his ability was the real deal and wondered why he wasn't more famous. He said that he only came to the capital recently, and before this he was studying alchemy out in the countryside. Hearing this, Daisy had a favor for Wraith. She said that she would like him to come over and help out once in a while, and she wanted him to teach her alchemy too. Wraith was surprised. Unfortunately, he didn't have any experience in teaching, but it sounded interesting, so he accepted. Now that it was decided, Daisy showed her the request paper and he signed it. He said that he would bring this to the guild right away and left there. With that, Wraith finished his first request with a promise that he would teach her alchemy for some reason. At the guild, Amelia congratulated him on completing his request. She didn't think that he would be the one to complete it. She gave him his reward, which was 1 gold coin. Wraith turned to Laffy and said that he could complete the request on his own. Laffy glared at him and told him to repeat what he said earlier. Wraith froze. 30 minutes earlier, he entered the guild with a completed request. He said that the quests were tough. The request was to do as many as you can, so he didn't know when to stop. He just did it normally and ended up filling the whole room, and the client was so shocked when she saw it that she passed out. And so he also promised that he would teach her alchemy after that. Recalling this, he admitted that he overdid it a little. Laffy reminded him that it was not a little incident. He made the client pass out. And another thing, she told him that she was pretty sure he was being taken advantage of by that client. She got him to agree to come over regularly to help out with her ridiculous alchemy, and for him to teach her alchemy too. To the client, it must have been pretty much the perfect outcome. Wraith now realized what was about her precious smile. Laffy said that it was not a bad thing to be nice to people, but he needed to be more cautious and be more aware of his own worth. It was pretty hard to learn his own worth, as Wraith said. In the next chapter, 2 adventurers are talking about a rumor about an alchemist. She said that an alchemist with lots of elixirs showed up at the guild and asked if he thought it was real. It sounded like a big lie to him. While talking, they heard something weird. A few days after Race became an adventurer, as promised, he accepted Daisy's request. At her shop, he told her that it was hard to know your own worth. Daisy asked what was this all of a sudden, and he explained that a friend of his told him that he should be more aware of his own worth. So he had been trying to think of how to do that. But it was harder than he thought. Daisy didn't know he had friends. Wraith was shocked that she thought of him as some friendless loner. Daisy said that the most important thing was to do things in moderation. Wraith wanted to know what that was. She said that, for example, if someone were to start selling lots of elixirs at once, that would surely draw attention. So it would be better to set a standard like only selling 1 elixir per year. However, the best way would be to sell them secretly so others don't find out. Selling elixirs was a good thing. They could save lives after all, but if he stood out, it would attract all sorts of bad guys. Not like there would be any idiot who would try to sell a whole bunch of valuable elixirs at once. She asked if he made elixirs and wanted him to teach her how to make them too. He accepted and told her to show him extract, purify, set components, and sublimate. Daisy smiled confidently and told him to watch her carefully. Today was the first time Wraith was teaching her alchemy, which was a day Daisy had been looking forward to. She focused and created a high-quality potion within a pretty short time. Wraith seemed impressed. Daisy was happy and excited that he liked it, but she was completely shocked when he said that she lacked knowledge. Irritated, she asked him to repeat what he just said. He said that she knew all the fundamentals, but he was talking about the kind of knowledge she could find in the books. For example, there was an ingredient he had called Kyukura. It only grows in places where the atmospheric mana is dense enough. It was a common ingredient in elixirs and high potions, but Kyukura was not found in most books about plants or herbs, and of course she didn't know about its experience. Now it was time for her to study. Wraith put a bunch of books on the desk and made her start studying. She couldn't believe he was really making her study. She asked if studying would improve her alchemy, and he responded by asking if she knew about the lamu herb. She said that it was primarily used to stop bleeding. It was most effective when ground up and applied directly to a wound. He said that she was right. The alchemists take its clotting effect and amplify it with alchemy, producing a potion that can treat wounds. Here they have the potion that she made from lamu, and one that he made. Daisy started scanning and stated that his potion was high quality while hers was medium quality. He asked if she would be able to tell what they did differently, and she couldn't. He explained kindly that the difference was in whether they visualized the process of sublimate. The person's understanding of the herb's components and how they used it had an effect on whether they could properly visualize the process, affecting the quality of the potion. And studying was a necessary step in mastering anything. In the next scene, Sylvia greeted Wraith. She heard from her sister that he had become an adventurer. He said that he only did alchemy-related requests, so he couldn't really call himself an adventurer. Sylvia responded by saying that she had heard. Wraith hoped that Laffy didn't tell her about the fainting incident. Laffy came and asked how he had been doing. She was wearing an apron, so he couldn't really recognize her. She scolded him, saying that she was still a girl, so he apologized. She slammed the pot on the table, telling them that they should eat before the food gets cold. Wraith said that he didn't come here to eat, but she told him that he was their guest today, so he was going to eat it. Sylvia apologized to Laffy for making her do all the work, but she told him that it was fine and that she still had not fully recovered. It was her first time making this dish, but she said that it came out pretty well. They started eating, and while eating, Laffy asked how he had been. He said he started teaching Daisy alchemy. She wondered if he was going to teach Daisy alchemy like he did. Wraith said that it would probably be a few more decades until she reached that level. Sylvia asked if he learned alchemy on his own, but he got in a gloomy mood and said that he had a mentor. She seemed interested and asked what kind of person they were, and he said that he was hopeless. He said that they would throw him into a beast den when he was just a kid as training. They never did any housework and they were a spendthrift, a drunkard, a weirdo, and a completely hopeless person. He also mentioned that he did not want to see them again. After dinner, Wraith was about to go and Sylvia stopped him. She thanked him from the bottom of her heart. She said that she really saved her sister when he gave them that elixir. Wraith smiled happily and stated that he was glad he was able to help. After that, he started walking to his inn. Now that he had finished Daisy's request, he could go to the guild. He noticed that people were gathered and went there wondering what was going on. He saw Amelia and she asked for his help. Right now, at the town entrance, there were 2 injured adventurers and one of them was on the verge of death. Wraith was in a dilemma because Amelia knew that he had an elixir, and if he used his elixir here it would be dangerous. He recalled what Laffy said about how bad guys would do terrible things to him knowing what he could do. Wraith made his decision and told her to show him where they were. He couldn't look away the other way when there were lives he could save. She dragged him to the entrance of the town, and when he saw the injured woman, he realized how serious the situation was. He analyzed the woman and she had several problems like blood loss, rot, and poison. He gave a great potion to the man who was holding her. The green potion was for the blood, an elixir for the wound itself. He looked at his potions but he didn't have anything for the poison. He had to make one at that moment. While they were wondering who he was, he made the potion and gave it to her. After drinking all 3 potions, the woman was healed. The whole town was shocked and happy that a life was saved. As a result of so many people witnessing him healing that girl's wounds, Wraith received a mountain of direct requests asking for him. He should have known it wouldn't be that easy, and he admitted that this was even a bigger headache than when he was broke. He looked at the requests and most of them were asking him to make or sell elixirs to them, and a good portion of them were just collectors or rich people who weren't even sick or injured. The woman he healed came and thanked him for healing her with elixir and promised to pay him back if it took his whole life. Wraith said that he was the one who used an elixir without asking her, so he didn't need payment, but she still wanted to do something, so he asked her to help him when he was in trouble. She promised him and left the room. He was so focused at that time that he forgot, but she reminded him that he managed to help someone with his power. From now on, he was only going to sell elixirs to people who actually needed it, and just in case, he would do his best to find ways to solve people's problems without using elixirs. He went to the hospital and started treating people, but after a while he realized how exhausting it was. He was pretty much done with the requests, but he was starting to run low on ingredients, so might have to go home for the first time in a long while, or he wouldn't be able to accept requests. He went to the Adventurers Guild to say that he had finished the requests, and Amelia informed him that he had a direct request from a high-ranking noble. Wraith took a look at the request. Amelia informed him that they were from the Redium family, which he declined earlier. Wraith was thinking about turning them once again, but Amelia said that they were waiting to pick him up outside. The Redium family was one of the 4 great noble families of the kingdom, descendants of an ancient and honorable lineage going back to the founders of the country. In addition to supporting the royal family, they oversee a wide range of affairs, including managing the lands and even foreign relations. They also had connections with the Adventurers Guild. Amelia wished him good luck and he smiled at her kindly, even though he just wanted to go home and sleep. In front of their mansion, Wraith took his time examining the outside. A maid greeted him and invited him inside. They went inside and the maid knocked on a door, stating that Wraith was there. Wraith wondered if he would listen to what he said. His heart was pounding. Hearing the master's voice, Wraith felt even more nervous. When they entered his room, a good-looking young man introduced himself as Will's Redium. Wraith also introduced himself and he started chit-chatting him. Wraith wanted to go home rather than stand there and chit with him. Will's Redium straightened his back, noticing no need for pretenses. He asked if he had no intention of selling him an elixir. Wraith smiled and declined him. When he offered 300 gold coins, he declined again. When he offered to give his family support, he still declined. Wills understood that he was very clear about his position and wanted to ask him something. He wondered if he learned alchemy on his own. He said that he had a mentor. Wills asked who that was, but Wraith explained that even if he learned who it was, nothing good would come of it. The alchemist that taught him was called Lurams. Will's face changed and he asked if he was talking about the fallen hero. Wraith could not believe the rumors even reached the capital. Will smiled and said that if he was her disciple, that would explain a lot. Will thanked him for his time and said that he would prepare a carriage to take him back. Wraith refused this, as well as he had somewhere else he wanted to stop by. Will smiled kindly, and while offering his hand he stated that he was hoping to have a good relationship with him. They shook hands and Wraith left the mansion. In the city, Wraith haven't had a moment to himself lately with all the requests for him, and because of all that, he only had one elixir left. He had used a lot of his ingredients, so he wanted to go shopping today. He came across Sylvia and Laffy. Sylvia was now able to go outside thanks to Wraith. He asked what she was holding, and she said that it was a staff for amplifying magic. She was an adventurer herself too. He asked what was her adventurer rank. He was shocked to hear that she was an S rank. He asked if they were going to do a request now, and Laffy responded that they just returned from a request to take down a water dragon. In this world, monsters were assigned ranks according to their strength. The highest was S's and the lowest was F. Among them, even the lowest ranked dragon was at least an S rank. One dragon was strong enough to destroy a country by itself. Knowing that, Wraith realized that even though she was the one who called him the abnormal one, she was doing some pretty crazy stuff herself. They ended their conversation and the girls left to go to Daisy's place. While they were walking, Sylvia wondered where Wraith came from, and if he had been by himself the whole time. Laffy reminded her that he had a mentor so he wasn't alone. She asked why she wondered that. She said that Wraith was amazing, but he doesn't talk about himself at all. Laffy responded that there was lots of stuff about themselves that they hadn't told Wraith either. They wondered if he would be surprised to learn that they were not really sisters. Laffy guessed that he would be more surprised to learn how different she was back then from how she was now. Sylvia was a girl who was kidnapped by goblins. When Laffy was nursing her, she couldn't even remember anything other than her name. She was a lost girl with no relatives to speak of, so Laffy took her as a sister and began living with her. She felt like she was relying on Laffy a lot, so to prove that wrong, Laffy told her to carry their stuff to the carriage using her magic. That was easy for her normally, but then she froze and collapsed. Laffy was confused and worried as to why that was happening. Sylvia thought the elixir was supposed to cure her, but she couldn't move. Laffy held her while Sylvia was worrying about the luggage. She didn't care about the luggage and wished Wraith's help. Meanwhile, Wraith was about to reach Daisy's shop. He took a different path, but fortunately, he arrived at her shop. He was getting used to the capital. That was the first time he was going to Daisy's shop as a customer, and he couldn't even imagine she would be very pleased to see him. He imagined her face before going in. When the door opened, Daisy welcomed her customer with a shining face, but seeing him, she stopped acting. She noted that it was unusual for him to come here without a request from her, which he responded by saying that he was running low on ingredients, so he needed to replenish his supplies. Daisy noticed that he was really busy with saving people with his elixirs and whatnot. She asked why he kept coming to consult her anyway and told him to be more aware of his worth. This issue was harder than it sounded. Wraith took the ingredients he needed. Daisy said that it was 2 silver coins and smiled at him like he was a regular customer. Wraith was impressed by her customer service smile of hers. Daisy asked what he was planning to do with those ingredients, and he said that he was thinking about making some ointment. Daisy reminded him that he would be getting on the herbalist's bad side if he did that, and if some alchemists started making more effective medicines than them, they would be out of a job. Wraith was okay with that. He did hear that his mentor was also hated by the herbalists. Daisy realized that he didn't care about it, so she mentioned that the adventurer he saved was apparently attacked in a pretty unusual place. Wraith didn't know that, even though he was the one who saved them. Apparently it happened in a place where monsters have never been reported before, and there was also an unoccupied house nearby. The wound he treated had both poison and rot in it. There were several poisonous monsters, but not many monsters could inflict rot. The wound could have been from an undead-type monster, or it could have been from a special weapon. Those were the 2 possibilities. The exact conditions for a monster to appear were unknown, but it was said that they appeared in places where mana was dense. Regardless, strange things happen from time to time. Wraith bought the ingredients and left the shop. When he opened the door, a hand reached for him and started dragging him. It was Laffy. She apologized while dragging him and stated that she would explain it later. She took him to her house and Wraith took a look at Sylvia, who got sick again. Laffy was feeling so guilty that as an S-ranked adventurer, she couldn't save one person. While she was about to beg him to save her, Wraith interrupted her and told her that she was going to be fine. He smiled and stated that he was going to save her. Laffy gasped and bowed to him, thanking him. Wraith explained to her that Saliva was not able to move because of a condition known as magic crystal disease. Magic crystal disease was a condition where magical energy slowly crystallized inside the body, making the inflicted unable to move. The elixir he gave her must have only slowed down its progress instead of curing it. This was the first time he had seen this disease, but he could make a potion to cure this disease. The only problem was that he didn't have the ingredients to make it. Laffy volunteered to gather the ingredients, but he said that she was not familiar with the herbs. He suggested she come with him to his house. There were monsters there, but it also had the ingredients he needed for the potion. Laffy gladly accepted to help him. The crystallization seemed to only be in her hands and feet. The time it would take to reach her heart was about 7 days. He told Laffy that Sylvia had about 7 days before the condition became critical, so they still had some time. They were going to leave tomorrow morning. Until then, he had things he needed to prepare, so he headed home now. Before he left, Laffy stopped him and thanked him for his help. Wraith grinned. At home, Wraith was busy in her laboratory. He added the poison antidote to the ointment and mixed the monster warding potion with the curing potion. Lastly, he took out his ring and put it on the table. The next morning, Laffy was ready with the carriage. They got on the carriage and headed to gather the herbs that Saliva needed. On the road, Wraith asked if there was anyone taking care of Sylvia. She said that Amelia was looking after her. Wraith knew she was probably doing it for Laffy. Laffy must have lowered her head and begged her to do it. He can't even think of anyone better to look after Sylvia right now. That being said, he said that there was something he had been wondering after examining Sylvia. He said that magic crystal disease originally came from the Northeast, and it was not a disease she would contract in the capital. He asked if Sylvia ever visited the Northeast. Laffy said that she had not since she met her. With that, Laffy didn't see any point in hiding and confessed that they were not biological sisters. She saved her after she lost her memories, and since she didn't have any relatives, she took her in. Wraith listened to her carefully. She said those words so easily, but to make such a decision when she was even younger than she was now was not something that could be taken lightly. Knowing that she lost her memories, it was possible that she originally came from the Northeast. Laffy promised to keep that in mind and then asked where his house was. Wraith was living in a small wooden house that was farther down the road they were in. Living in a forest was unusual, but that small house was where his mentor brought him to live until she mysteriously disappeared one day. He was still questioning where his mentor was. They suddenly found someone injured in the forest. Wraith treated the man and he asked if they were heading into the forest. When they confirmed him, he told them not. He said that he was attacked by a monster in there and he barely escaped with his life. Laffy asked what kind of monster it was, and it was a blood wolf. They thanked him and informed him that they had their reasons, so they needed to keep going. After a while, they arrived at the forest he was living in. They started walking. If there were not monsters, they could have continued by carriage, but considering the risk, it was better to proceed as inconspicuously as possible. There might be monsters, so Wraith warned Laffy. Laffy was fully focused on her job. As she was an S rank, she was ready for a battle at any moment, and her eyes were everywhere. They were already halfway to his house, but they hadn't seen a single monster so far. He wouldn't be surprised if they ran into one right about now. Suddenly, something cold dropped on his head, and Laffy could warn him 1 second before the explosion happened. Wraith could barely escape from that attack. That was a C-rank blood wolf. And it was not just one, they were surrounded by them. Wraith was surprisingly collected. He said that he was used to those sorts of situations and he was actually terrified on the inside. So much so that he would love to just make a beeline out of here right now. Hearing that he wanted to run for it, Laffy started attacking the wolves. Her plan was for Wraith to run away from there and hide while she held them there. She said that even for someone like her, she can't fight this many of them while protecting him. Wraith was concerned about her, but she reminded him who he was talking to by slicing up the wolves one by one. Wraith started running away. While Laffy was out there wiping out the blood wolves, he was bummed that all he could do was find a place to hide until it was over. He felt pathetic. Suddenly, he heard some rustles and it was more blood wolves. He started running away from them too, but they were a lot and they were so fast. He took out a potion that repels monsters, one that was particularly effective against animal-type monsters. He threw the potion to the wolves. He was so confident that they would stop and run away, but they sniffed the potion and then stared at him for a second before they started chasing him again. As he was running away from them at full speed, he was questioning why they were chasing him. The only answer was that their sense of smell was numb. Considering that this was the problem, he took out the potion again and splashed it on their eyes. That was a homebrewed dye of his and it should impair their vision for a while. Then he threw something that made them stop hearing. If they couldn't smell, he only needed to deal with their sight and hearing to throw them off. That was exhausting, but there was no time to lose as he needed to find Laffy. Suddenly he heard a crashing sound from the tree that he was leaning on. Meanwhile, Laffy was done with the blood wolves and she was looking for Wraith. She heard the sound of something and got a bad feeling about that. She started running towards where the sound came from. Wraith was questioning his luck while also running away from a burning skeleton. He brainstormed what to do. Skeletons didn't have any of the 5 senses. Thus, monster-repelling potions or vision-impairing dye wouldn't work on it. The skeleton chasing him over 2 meters tall and wielding a large sword that could fall a tree in one strike was an impressive specimen indeed. But even such a creature had a weakness, which was holy water. He had 3 vials with him right now, and realistically, even if he used all 3, it would barely be enough to hold it back for a while. So he tried to think of a different way. He had an idea and he threw something on the skeleton. The thing he threw seemed to be working. He continued to throw potions at it and then used his compress and agitate power. What he used was kuchna, which forms a highly adhesive fluid when mixed with water. Laffy was looking for Wraith when she saw smoke rising. A few minutes ago, Wraith somehow managed to immobilize it for a while, but he wouldn't be able to take it on if it came after him again. He needs to get away from there and find Laffy immediately. He had put some distance between them, and he couldn't hear the skeleton anymore, so it was a good place to use his smoke signal method. He put some kora fruit, normally used to make dye, into a pot and compressed it with alchemy to force it to explode. This converts the kora fruit into a gaseous form. However, this was considered a failed alchemy process and not normally done on purpose. He knew about this, but it was his first time actually doing it. Now he just needed to hide and wait for Laffy to come. He decided to climb a tree and pass the time that way, but there was no need for that. The massive sword of the skeleton came at him and shattered his resistance ring, which was his last line of defense. It sucks that he lost his ring to a surprise attack like that, and he was sure he could buy more time if only he used it more effectively. He didn't have anything up his sleeve anymore, and his stamina was running out too. It looked like this was how he was going to die. The skeleton reached him, but just a second before it reached, Laffy came and used her crush power to crush the monster. She asked if he was okay, and Wraith blushed a little. Seeing his comfortable face made her laugh that he had no sense of danger. Wraith asked if she dropped her sword, and she said that when she threw it at the skeleton's arm earlier. However, when they looked at the skeleton, it started to regenerate, which was a trouble for Laffy. She told him to step back and deal with the skeleton by herself. Wraith thought she won, but she just couldn't destroy it. The skeleton was using magic, so she decided to destroy that magic of its by force. With fracture skills, she attacked it, and Wraith found himself in her arms like he was a princess. Wraith was sure he couldn't get married now that he was in the arms of a girl. Laffy said that running was their only option as long as they couldn't beat that skeleton, and she asked if he knew the way to his house from there. Wraith realized what their priorities must be, and it was definitely the ingredients he needed. He guided Laffy while the skeleton was chasing them. The skeleton suddenly stopped and started growling. He wondered what he was doing, and then noticed that the blood wolves were gathering. He informed Laffy that it was calling more blood wolves. Laffy planned to fight them off as they ran while also not dropping him. A blood wolf attacked her, but she did manage to slice it off while holding him. Wraith was once again impressed. Suddenly, Laffy had a feeling. Wraith asked, and she said that those blood wolves were not alive. She guessed that they were dead bodies being controlled by that skeleton. She told him to look at their shadows, and Wraith also noticed that they were controlled by magic. Magic that could control dead bodies, also known as necromancy. This explained that they didn't have a sense of smell. This was his first time seeing a skeleton that could use magic. Among monsters, there were a few who were able to use magic, such as dragons with their breath. Even so, the ability to puppeteer corpses was a level of magic that normally only proper mages could cast. If they were assigned this skeleton a rank, it would be pretty high. He asked what they were going to do, and she said that they just had to fight it. She wanted him to grab what he needed while she held them off. They were near his house, and after running for a while, they arrived. Laffy dropped him, and he entered the house while she was fighting off with the wolves. The dust in the house was terrible, as this place had been deserted for so long, but he was just glad that it hadn't been destroyed. His materials were in the basement. When he went down there, all his stuff was fine. He wished to carry more of it with him, but for now, he only got what he needed. Those materials he risked his life and limb to gather would definitely come back for him someday. He noticed a sword, which was from that time his mentor sent him to gather ingredients. He recalled the time he was battered, complaining that he was going to die back there and scolding his mentor that she was going to kill him. She greeted him like he wasn't in total dust and told him to make sure to store those ingredients properly. He couldn't believe she was saying those when his disciple just returned all beaten and bruised, and also he didn't hear anything about there being undead too. Because I didn't mention it, she said while acting cute. Wraith was sure she would get him killed one day. She started laughing and said that she didn't know there were undead there either. Undead were easy to deal with anyway, just slapping holy water on them would be enough. But Wraith reminded her that he couldn't use magic like her. If he tried, he would be minced meat before he even had a chance to splash it. She responded that he would be closer to a fillet than minced meat, which wouldn't matter when he was dead. In that case, she brought a sword saying that she had a gift for him. She made it a long time ago and never found a use for it, but it was really good against undead. But Wraith didn't know how to use a sword. Back to the present, he took the sword, thinking that his bad mentor could be helpful sometimes. He was going to bring that sword to Laffy, but the moment he stepped outside his home, the home was destroyed. Laffy came in panic asking if he was alright. Wraith started yelling at her, saying that he would never forgive her because of all the ingredients that he spent his blood, sweat, and tears. He gave her the sword and said that she could defeat it with that. He didn't sound so confident of that, so he explained that he wasn't the one who made it. The sword was light, but when she used it on the skeleton, it did not regenerate. That sword worked on him. After her attack, the skeleton literally ran away, but Laffy didn't seem like she would let it off that easily. She jumped on it before it disappeared completely and killed it. Wraith was impressed, but she said that she was not an S rank for nothing. But to be fair, she only won this time thanks to that sword. From the skeleton's body, a big magic gem appeared. Magic gems were crystallized forms of magical energy. They are used as a material in creating magical devices. They tend to be found in the bodies of strong monsters, and they emit magical energy and serve as a source of power for those monsters. It was Wraith's first time seeing one. He knew they existed, and he had always wanted to use one in his alchemy someday, but since they weren't things that could be bought and sold easily, he hadn't had a chance to get his hands on one until now. To think that they were able to get both a magic gem accomplished and their objective of getting the ingredients he needed was excellent. But one thing was upsetting him, and it was the fact that he lost all the precious materials buried inside the remains of his house. It was tragic, but there was nothing he could do about it now. They had defeated the skeleton and got the ingredients they came for, and now it was time to hurry back home. It had been 2 days since the morning after Sylvia collapsed, and Laffy and Wraith returned to the capital. Only 5 days left to treat Sylvia. When they arrived at home, Laffy rushed to see her sister. Amelia and Sylvia were sleeping. Wraith went to make the potion while she was taking care of her sister. Now it was time to get started. Sylvia's magic crystal disease was a result of the magical energy in her body crystallizing, so he was going to make a potion to absorb that magical energy, using the ingredients from a monster. The monster he was using was called a Veto. It was an SS rank monster that inhabited the north, and its most defining feature was its ability to consume the magical energy of others. A monster that absorbs the magical energy of those who come in contact with it. There had been incidents where those working with the Veto lost control of it, were absorbed and died. Magic isolating gloves were needed to handle it without losing consciousness, and of course his mentor would defeat those terrifying creatures to use them in her experiments. Wraith simply got her leftovers. He loosened up the dehydrated Veto, added water, and heated it. He used to purify and sublimate. If that was a normal potion, he would use set components now, but that step was not needed for medicinal potions. The most important step was sublimating. It was normally a step to amplify the effectiveness of the ingredients, but not in this case. Here, he wanted to suppress the magic-absorbing properties of the Veto. This was a feat that only experienced alchemists were able to do on purpose. He focused and believed in himself. Laffy was watching the room glowing. She took a look at him and was amazed by his skills. She trusted him on Sylvia's treatment. She was truly believing him. After tense moments, all he had to do was to get Sylvia to drink that. But she was sleeping, and she didn't want to forcibly wake her, so he decided to wait until morning and take a short rest on the table. He woke up in the morning and brought the potion to Laffy. When he saw Laffy, he asked where was Amelia. She responded that she had just gone home since she was there to take care of Sylvia. He said that he finished making the potion. Laffy was so happy that she teared up a little. They knocked on Sylvia's door and entered the room. Sylvia's wounds were all over her body. Laffy and Wraith immediately went to her, and when he checked, Wraith noticed that the disease was progressing faster than he thought. He gave the potion to her and told her to drink it. She drank the potion, but the wounds were not disappearing. Laffy got panicked asking what was going on, but Wraith said that this was a slow-acting potion and she shouldn't panic if nothing happened today. And no matter what, he warned Sylvia to not use her magic until he said she could. Wraith used his scanning skill and saw that the slow of her magic was stabilizing, which meant the potion was working. He said that for now, her life was not in danger anymore. With a big smile on his face, he told them to relax and take it easy today and get a lot of rest. Laffy couldn't stand still after hearing his words. They worried about her, but it was just that she couldn't stand as all the strength left her body when she relaxed. They started celebrating together when Wraith left the room. He was good for today since he borrowed Laffy's place, but he needed a place where he could manage his ingredients and potions. The inn he was in now was pretty limited. There might be patients he wouldn't be able to treat because he didn't have enough working space. He wanted a spacious place, somewhere he wouldn't be a bother to anyone. He went to Daisy's shop, but he was spacing out, so she asked what was going on. He said that it was peaceful there. He just risked his life the other day at getting some materials from the forest, and they were chased by a giant skeleton and a whole bunch of blood wolves. Daisy asked if that skeleton could have been the monster that attacked the adventurer he saved. Wraith was surprised. Word in the guild is that those two saw a giant skeleton, but for that to happen in the forest where there weren't supposed to be any monsters was a little weird. She asked what happened to the skeleton, and he said that they defeated it. He said that the adventurer he was with pretty much did all the work. Daisy asked who that was because that skeleton was at least an A+ rank. He said that he was with the adventurer named Laffy. She recalled that Laffy was the name of the S-ranked adventurer who was the youngest. She was impressed that he knew someone that famous as he hadn't been here in the capital for half a year. The next day arrived and Sylvia was better. Her magic circulation was pretty healthy too, and she made a complete recovery. Sylvia was so happy that she hugged Wraith thanking him. Wraith stated how glad he was that everything turned out fine. He then mentioned that they were talking about that skeleton that they fought in the guild. She said that she received a request to get rid of a monster this morning and the location was the forest near the capital, the same one they went to the other day. Wraith was surprised that they asked specifically for her. She also mentioned that the client was the head of the Redium family, one of the 4 great noble families. Wraith knew that guy. Sylvia said that she already defeated that skeleton. Laffy responded that there were probably still blood wolves around, but she decided to report the skeleton thing to the guild first. Wraith decided to come along too, as she would need the magic gem to prove they had defeated it, and Sylvia wanted to join them too. 3 of them started walking to the guild. Wraith noticed that there were a lot of different shops in this city. Sylvia promised to introduce him to the place where they bought weapons next time. They stopped at a jewelry shop and Sylvia liked a necklace for Laffy. Wraith was looking at the accessories that might make a good replacement for the ring he broke. Sylvia asked if there was something he wanted to buy, as she wanted to buy him a present for treating her. It was really hard to say no to a huge smile like hers, so he showed her the ring. Based on her reaction, Wraith wanted to choose something else, but she said that she would buy it. A necklace as a present means, "I hope you will stay safe," meanwhile. A ring as a present means something else that makes her blush. After buying the gifts, they arrived at the guild and Amelia seemed so happy to see her healthy. Sylvia thanked her for looking after her. Wraith felt good seeing them being so close to each other. Amelia asked if Laffy was here because of the request, and she said that it was about the monster the request was asking about. She explained that when they went to that forest to get the ingredients to treat Sylvia, they defeated it. That was amazing to Amelia. Wraith took out the magic gem they got from the skeleton. For a magic gem this size, the monster would have been a tough opponent for anyone other than an S-ranked adventurer. She knew that Laffy was really strong, but she still reminded her to not overdo things. She checked the magic gem and it was real. She was going to make the report to the Redium family and then they would get the reward in 3 days. Laffy stated that she wanted to give all of the rewards to Wraith. He tried to stop her, but she said that she did everything for Sylvia, not for the award, and so as a token of appreciation to Wraith, it was only right to let him have the reward for the skeleton. Wraith gave up on her after hearing her, but the reward was 200 gold coins. He didn't even know what to do with that many coins, but Sylvia suggested opening a shop. Managing a shop with no experience would be rough, but he had talked about it with Daisy before. He made his decision and decided to make a workshop. A workshop was a place that held great meaning to any alchemist, a place where they could freely experiment without bothering others, and Wraith was no exception. While living in the forest, most of his experiments were isolated in the underground workshop. But even since coming to the capital, he had been too occupied with life and finances to think about it. But now he had money to spare and he could make one. He went to Daisy's shop and told her about his plan too. Daisy wondered why he wanted that all of a sudden. He said that he had money to spare and he could use it to make his workshop. She was still figuring out why he would come to her. He explained that he didn't know any skilled craftspeople or anything, so he thought he would come and ask the all-knowing Daisy for help. Daisy seemed charmed. Wraith's master made her workshop all on her own, but she was an exception among exceptions. Daisy stated that she knew many people who could help him, but she wanted to come along too. Wraith didn't expect her to be in his workshop. Daisy asked in a furious tone if he was opposed to having her around, but it was just that he already had someone else in his mind that he wanted to help him with making the workshop. Daisy's face got darker, and she said that this was for his sake too. Wraith could not say anything further, but he was still worried, because she seemed like an antisocial person. Wraith was surprised that she started pushing him to walk as the shop would be unsupervised, but she explained that she was going to close up the shop in the afternoon anyway. They started walking and she asked about the person on his mind. He asked if she knew Sylvia, Laffy's younger sister. Daisy did know her, but she asked if he was an idiot as he was thinking about asking an S-rank adventurer to help himself. Wraith explained that he wasn't the one who suggested that. After that, he asked what was the person who knew how to make a workshop like, and she simply responded that they were a total weirdo. Wraith didn't scared as he already knew a weird person, which was Daisy. They arrived at a normal-looking house and knocked. When the door opened, a happy woman screamed because of her happiness to see Daisy. She hugged her tightly while she was yelling for her to let her go. Wraith did not expect her to be this strange. Daisy pushed her, saying that it was enough. The woman started tearing up, explaining that this was how she expressed her eternal love for her. But she responded cruelly that she did not need it. Then the woman noticed Wraith. He introduced himself and she seemed to hear about him. Her name was Nicola. Nicola asked why they came to her. He said that he wanted to make a workshop and Daisy brought him to her. Nicola seemed happy that Daisy preferred her. About his request to make a workshop, she asked if it would be his first workshop while taking out some paper. Wraith responded that he had one before and he had an idea of what was needed. This time he wanted to make one in the 2-story building he was living in. He already had a prototype for the workshop, so he would like to base it on that his budget was 200 gold coins. But he could add a little more if it was not enough. Nicola said that with a budget like that, There were many that they could do, and asked what he was planning to use the workshop for. He was planning to use it mainly for making potions and magical devices. He then remembered to show her the magic gem, asking if it would be useful as part of the workshop. Nicola seemed impressed. She asked him to show her where he wanted his workshop to be, and they would discuss the price after she had seen the place. They waited for her while she got some things ready. While waiting, Wraith asked how she knew Nicola, and she said that she met her when she was an adventurer, and hadn't been able to get rid of her since. He was shocked to know that she was an adventurer. Nicola came and they started walking. He showed them the place that would serve as his live-in workshop. The place was quite big. They entered inside and Nicola started examining the place. She decided to make her quote now, and about that magic gem, she asked if he would like to use it to store magical energy. Wraith was surprised because magic gems were mainly used as materials for magical devices, or as devices themselves, and she was suggesting none of them. Nicola explained that he already had a lot of magical devices in his workshop, and it must be a lot of work for him to supply them with magical energy every time. So using the magic gem to store magical energy so that he could use his tools right when he needed would be better. Magical devices require a large amount of magical energy to work. Having a reserve of magical energy would make it a lot easier to work with devices that continuously consume magical energy, so he was in. Nicola then informed him that they would start setting up his workshop in a week or so. She then changed her whole mood, questioning him about what kind of relationship he had with Daisy. Wraith shuddered and wanted to escape from the feeling of terror he was in right now, but Nicola grabbed his neck. Before he could say something, Daisy explained that they had a very good relationship, skipping that it was a teacher-student relationship, and then added that he had been teaching her all sorts of things. Wraith stated that it was a little bit weird way to explain their relationship while trembling in fear. Nicola called Wraith, and with a white face she threatened him about what would happen if he ever laid his hands on Daisy. Wraith swore that he would never do anything to her. Hearing this, Nicola's whole mood brightened and she smiled like nothing happened. She kissed and hugged Daisy and told her that she would be going home now. While Daisy was trying to push Nicola as she was touching and kissing her, Wraith didn't know where to look. When she finally left, Wraith asked if she really wanted to come next week too, but Daisy was still dedicated. She said that there was nothing she could do about how touchy she was. Before she left, she thanked me for today. In the next scene, Wraith and Laffy are walking as she asks what he came to buy today. He said that he was going to buy anything that looked good, such as stuff for his workshop's interior. She asked how it was going with the workshop, and Wraith could only respond that it would work out. Wraith then took out a flower clip and tried it on Laffy. She got embarrassed and said that there was no way that she would look good with something girly like that. A shop owner saw them and asked if they were on a shopping date and offered to give them a discount. However, they were so quick to say that they weren't dating. Wraith started to buy whatever he wanted while Laffy was waiting for him to finish. The next stop was some ingredients for dinner, so he asked if there was anything Sylvia and her liked. She didn't have any preferences, but Sylvia likes sweet things. When Wraith said girls in her age love that sort of thing, she noticed how old he sounded. Wraith felt like Daisy said something similar to him before and got depressed for a moment. They decided to make some dessert as well and went home. In the kitchen of Laffy's home, they started chopping off the dragon meat. Wraith wanted to help, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't cut it. Laffy told him to cut the vegetables while she cut the meat because the dragon meat was pretty tough. Although the hardships, they managed to prepare a good meal. Sylvia seemed to like how the food looked. She already loved Laffy's cooking and she was looking forward to tasting Wraith's dessert. They started eating dinner while chit-chatting, and then Laffy and Wraith went to the kitchen to clean the dishes. She asked what exactly was a workshop, so he explained that it had stuff like magical devices and shelves to store ingredients. She thought it would have some strange things in it, considering that it was his workshop. After cleaning the dishes, Wraith thanked them for the meal and left for his home. 1 week later, Nicola, Daisy, and Wraith met, and Wraith said that he brought one other person to help out. He showed them Sylvia. She introduced herself with a shy face that Nicola was about to faint because of her cuteness. She wanted to hug her, but it was her first time, so she held herself back. Looking at Sylvia, Daisy compared herself to her and felt a little jealous. Sylvia said that he just offered to help out on him, so she wasn't sure what she would do. Nicola laughed and said that she didn't have to lift a finger as he would work hard enough to make up for her and Daisy both. Daisy approached Sylvia and wished to work together well with her. Sylvia was melting out of her cuteness. She whispered to Wraith, asking who she was as she was so cute. Wraith said that her name was Daisy and she was actually older than her. Hearing this, Sylvia panicked and used honorifics. Now that they were all here, Wraith asked Nicola if the preparations were done. She said that she had everything they needed in this magic bag she was holding. The magic bag used spatial magic to fit more things inside than its outer dimensions would suggest. It was a very useful item. However, it requires a high level of magic to make, and it was not readily available on the market, making it a rare item. Nicola explained that she had a mage friend of hers helping her with that, and they somehow managed to make one by working together. Making something together with someone was something that Wraith had never done before, so he was surprised. But he knew a mage who might offer their help, and they might be able to make some amazing things by working together. Now, it was time to work. Aside, it seemed like Sylvia might not be very good with Nicola as she couldn't focus on anything. When they entered the workshop, Nicola took out the furniture from her bag and used her spatial magic to put them in their places. Wraith was amazed by her magic. Sylvia asked if he was really that amazed. Something like that was nothing out of the ordinary for mages, he guessed. Sylvia said that spatial magic was fairly difficult to learn, and at the very least it was on the same level as the kind of magic she used. Hearing that, Wraith asked if she wanted to make a magic bag together with him. Sylvia thought this was a good idea and agreed to do it. While smiling nicely on the outside, Wraith was glad that he could finally have his magic bag. Now it was time to start with the stuff for the potions. Nicole set up a magical device for storing the ingredients. Ingredients like herbs require very precise temperatures and humidities when they are stored, and this is an unskippable step when making any kind of workshop. They split the work and started working all together. After finishing his first task, Wraith moved to his second task but then noticed Daisy and Sylvia talking. Sylvia was talking about something, but then Daisy warned her that it was not the time for chit-chat, and they needed to put their magical energy into the skeleton's magic gem. Nicola was setting up the magical device all by herself, and Sylvia the mage was already handling the charging of the magic gem while he had run out of things to do. As he felt a little useless around them, he decided to think about how to set up the rest of the workshop. On the second day of the workshop, they were going to make the magical devices. When Nicola asked if anyone had any ideas, Wraith was willing to say something. He said that he had something he wanted to try. He showed them the magic circle he drew. Nicola seemed interested while Daisy and Sylvia were confused. Sylvia had never seen one like that before. Wraith explained that this was a magic circle, but it was not for using magic. Daisy asked what it was in an impatient tone. He explained that this was a magic circle for creating magical devices. Using the alchemical process of append, he could imbue the magic circle with the magical effect he wanted, and use it to turn accessories and things into magical devices. He was thinking of using the magical energy from the magic gem to supply this magic circle with the energy it needed, and it might also be able to help shorten the time needed to make magic circles. Originally, magic circles could only be used once before being discarded. If used to create a magical device, it would lose its effect in the process and become useless. If one wanted to create another magical device, one would have to draw up a new magic circle from scratch. But if it was possible to continuously supply it with energy from a magic gem, the case might be different. Since the magic circle would be continuously supplied with magical energy, it should be possible to make it permanent and reusable. It would of course consume a large amount of magical energy in the process, but right now, they had a skeleton's magic gem holding the magical energy of an S-ranked mage. Nicola said that his idea might work and asked him to give her some time since she hadn't seen his magic circle before. Meanwhile, Daisy and Sylvia were puzzled. Wraith and Nicola finished their conversation and Wraith apologized for leaving them out. He then asked Sylvia once again if she would like to make that magic bag they were talking about the other day. He wanted her to apply some magic to a bag, but it wasn't just normal magic. He heard from Nicola about how to create a magic bag, and the problem was whether or not he would fail. He gathered the ingredients, which were veto fluid, a bag, and a brush. The fluid in the bottle had already absorbed some of his magical energy, and he used the fluid to draw a specialized magic circle on the surface of the bag. That was the first time he was doing it, so it was hard for him. Daisy and Sylvia waited patiently while he was drawing. After that, it was Sylvia's turn to apply spatial expansion magic to the magic circle. She told them to stand back and started the process. When she was done, they couldn't tell if it worked, so he tried out. He opened the bag and the inside of it was pretty big. She thought this was a success, but Wraith felt something strange. Something liquid came out of the bag and suddenly it turned into a round sphere and started to grow. Daisy barely held on to Wraith's foot as the sphere began to suck Wraith and the others into it. Sylvia used her pressure to stop the absorption. Luckily, no one was injured, but the growing sphere caused great damage to the walls of the house and other items. After exhaling and resting, they decided it would make the most sense to call Nicola. Sylvia's magic had worked fine, but the problem was with the magic circle he drew. Since he was drawing it for the first time, he probably got the markings wrong and it was supposed to contain the spatial expansion within the bag itself, but it must have failed and allowed the expansion outside the bag in an explosive manner. For now, they were going to assess the damage first. This room was supposed to be the heart of the workshop, and it was the closest to the front, and also the most spacious. It was where the magic gem and most of the magical devices were supposed to be kept. There was sure to be some damage to the other rooms too, so Wraith felt so bad for ruining this. Nicola came and informed him that they would not be able to continue with their original plan. He accepted his fate but stated that he would throw all his savings and they would use that to make the best workshop ever. A few days later, The damage had been recovered and the place looked great on the outside. He wondered if Nicola managed to do what he asked, and entered the workshop. When he entered, he saw the permanent magic circles that draw energy from the magic gem, and greatly increased the efficiency of producing magical devices. They were built using mithril, which was both tough and great at conducting magical energy. Nicola informed him that they didn't even have the magic circles drawn on yet, so they weren't finished. She just prepared 5 of them that were not too big, so they wouldn't get in the way. As a material, nothing beats mithril in terms of magical conductivity. However, it was a precious material that was rare and hard to work with. Just as Daisy said, Nicola was amazing at what she did. She said that it was difficult to carve directly into mithril, so she asked him to use a specialized tool made of mithril. Once he was done, she was going to connect the circuit linking them to the magic gem. Wraith was nervous. He cannot afford to fail like he did the other day. It was a magic circle he was used to drawing, but he still had to be careful. He drew every single one of them very carefully, and now it was time for Nicola's connecting job. She suddenly started walking around with the gem for some reason, so Wraith asked what she was doing. She said that she was using magic to draw the circuit. He asked if he could watch as she worked, and she was fine with it. After that, Wraith asked if she was an adventurer like Daisy in the past. She thought Daisy told him that they had a love story, but he said that it was not. She said that there was such time like that, but Daisy refused to join anyone's party, and that was when Nicola approached her. It was love at first sight, as she said. Wraith asked why she stopped, and she said that part of the reason was that she wanted to focus on crafting, but the main reason was because of a certain someone she met who influenced her. Someone who guided her down the path of a craftsperson. She described that they were beautiful on the outside and intelligent and resolute on the inside. They were the kind of person she strived to be. Wraith wondered the name of that person, and she said that they were pretty famous. In this kingdom, they were known as heroes. They go by the name Elixirs, which was Wraith's mentor. He told Nicola to give up on trying to become like that person and gave her his guarantee as her disciple. Nicola was shocked by his reaction and remembered that she had heard that she had a cute disciple. She asked if he knew where she was now, but Wraith had no idea. She said that even though she heard him, she wouldn't give up trying to find a way to meet Elixirs one more time. Wraith realized what kind of person she was, so he didn't insist on her any longer. With that, their work was finished. She had made sure that all the magical devices could activate properly too. Wraith tested out and everything seemed in order. She reminded him to not hesitate to call her again if he was not satisfied or if there was anything else he wanted. Daisy and Sylvia appeared wondering what was going on. Wraith excitedly informed them that the magic circles were working, which meant his workshop was finally completed. In the next scene, Laffy hears the news and asks how was the workshop. He said that it was great, but then got interrupted by Amelia, who had been waiting to see him. She gave him something that he thought was a letter, but then explained that it was not a letter. It was a direct request from the royal family. In the next chapter, we see Elixirs fighting with a big monster while sipping her drink. She was in a hurry as she heard that Wraith was in the capital. When Wraith was 7 years old, he was with Elixirs and asked her how she became so amazing. She asked him what was the most important when it comes to alchemy, to which he responded that it was knowledge. She said that there was something much more important than that, and that something was practical experience. She put him in front of a monster, telling him to grab that fruit near its nest like it was easy for a 7-year-old while he was screaming out of his lungs. This was what Wraith saw in his dream, and he woke up falling from his chair. The place he was using both as a living and working space had become where he spent most of his time, and falling asleep while working on his alchemy had become a regular occurrence. But compared to when he was under his mentor's guidance, his life was much more comfortable now. But there was one thing he was a little worried about, which was the letter from the royal family. It was delivered as a direct request for him to come to the royal cast in 3 days. He wasn't planning to turn down a request from the royal family, but there was one problem. It scared him that they didn't even include what they wanted him to do. Speaking of scary things, he was also affected by his dream, as it was the first time he had a mentor since coming to the royal capital. The thought of his mentor coming to visit him occurred in his mind, but he decided that he was just overthinking it. He decided to do his morning routine and then go shopping. One of his habits was to take care of things around his workshop in the morning, such as accelerating plant growth with alchemy. His whole mood brightened as he remembered how small those plants were before. He finished tidying up his tool and it was time to do some shopping. He noticed a letter in the mailbox, and when he opened it, he saw that it was from Elixirs, which froze him. He rubbed his eyes to see if he wasn't dreaming, but it was from Elixirs. He went to Laffy and Sylvia, explaining that this was an emergency meeting and something terrible had happened. Laffy asked if it was about the direct request he received from the royal family, but it was something far more grave than that. The girls' expectations were high, and when he said that his mentor was coming, they just giggled. Laffy was confused and asked if they should throw a party, but he started panicking, saying that he needed to run away and get out of there right now. She knew where he lived, and he was scared that his peaceful life was in danger. Laffy told him to calm down and said that since she was his mentor, they already knew she was not a normal person, but she wondered if he had to go so far just to avoid her. Wraith was sure it would be a touching reunion if it were between a mentor and disciple with a good relationship, but he stated that his mentor was terrible and had no common sense. Laffy reminded him that she was the one who wanted to meet him so he could just give in and see her. Wraith said that when he was living with her, he had to cook all the meals, do all the cleaning and all the laundry, while also being on the verge of death all the time, so he didn't want to go back to that sort of hell again. Suddenly Lurims was in the room greeting Wraith. Even two S-ranked mages couldn't notice that she was in there, so the tension in the room increased. Wraith panicked and said that he had something very important to do, but Lurims grabbed his shoulder and sat next to him, saying that it had been so long since they had seen each other. As she noticed Laffy and Sylvia, she said that she didn't peg him as the type to go around picking up cute girls, and asked if they were both his girlfriends. Wraith explained that they were his friends and she was being rude to people she had just met, and this was the reason why she was still single. Lurims froze for a second and then smiled at him, saying that there was something on his face, and then flicked his nose. Even with a single flick, Wraith was thrown away like a feather. The girls were shocked to see her power. Laffy asked who was this lady. Lurims' whole mood changed and she introduced herself as Wraith's mentor, the one and only Lurims. Laffy also introduced herself and Sylvia. Wraith asked what she was doing here in the capital, and she said that an acquaintance of her had something they wanted her to do here, and took out a letter from the royal family from her breasts. Wraith was shocked that she had human acquaintances. She said that she had some history with the royal family, but she did not appreciate the fallen hero nickname they gave her. While she was praising Wraith, Sylvia realized something and asked if it was the Lurims who fought off a horde of giant dragons attacking the royal capital and helped rebuild the city afterward. Lurims was surprised that a young girl knew her, but apparently she was famous for being the apex of all mages. Wraith asked Laffy if that was true, and she said that it was true. However, after helping with the reconstruction, the compensation she demanded was pretty outrageous. As far as Wraith knew, she wasn't interested in money, so he thought they might mistaken her for someone else. But when Laffy explained that she demanded to be allowed to drink for free at every establishment in the royal capital, and she drank every one of them dry, and it went on for 3 days and 3 nights, and forced the reconstruction celebrations to be delayed, he knew it was Lurims. Sylvia told about Wraith and how he saved her life, and Lurims smirked at him. Wraith said that he also got the same request and asked if she was going to accept it. She said that it depended on what it was and she had to be careful because all that was written was to come. Wraith got even more suspicious, thinking why they would even hide from his mentor. Lurims wanted to teach Sylvia some magic while they were here, and she was so happy. Wraith wanted to tell her to not be invested in her, but when he saw her face, he couldn't say it. But there was the fact that Sylvia was an S-ranked adventurer, so even if she threw her into a dragon's nest, she would be able to take care of herself. Lurims decided to start tomorrow, and Wraith excused himself. Laffy and Sylvia had a request to get to after that. He asked Lurims what she was going to do, and she said that she didn't have anything to do right now, so she would follow him. They went to his workshop and she seemed to like it. Daisy was annoyed that Wraith was late, but then asked who that lady was. Lurims introduced herself, and Daisy wanted to confirm if she was the fallen hero, which she confirmed. The way Daisy stared at her made Lurims sweat like a nervous child. Wraith asked Daisy if she had enough time, and she said that she had received a rare ingredient today, and it would take more time than usual to process. Before they started, Daisy asked if there was something she came for, and Lurims offered to help out as an apology for holding up her disciple here. Daisy accepted and then showed them the rare ingredient. It was a plant found in the southern troops that is used in cooking and medicines. Lurims asked how she was going to use it, and Daisy said that they would use it for medicines. After confirming that they had enough of them, Lurims started the process. She said that Kern had heat-preserving and antibacterial properties, but the tiniest mistake in its processing could give it a unique stink and make it unsellable. She was good at controlling it with magic, so she was pretty comfortable. Daisy and Wraith were amazed. Lurims asked for magic bottles as they were best kept inside them, but Wraith was still making them. She decided to use her own and snapped her fingers. A bunch of bottles appeared in the room and Daisy was for sure amazed. She was waiting for her to praise her a little, but Daisy was not a person like that. Wraith said that the mentor used a style that blends alchemy and magic, so it was different from how he did things. This was the first time Daisy had seen someone able to use spatial magic and control magic at the same time and put Wraith and Lurims in the same place. Wraith objected that he didn't drink and do his chores and had more common sense than her. Lurims said that she knew all about how he could produce elixirs left and right, but Wraith reminded her that she was made elixirs to pay her drinking tabs. Daisy looked at them fighting and then at the bottles and realized that they were both people who didn't know their worth. The next chapter begins with Wraith questioning why Lurims was following him like it was the most natural thing in the world. She explained herself by saying that checking out their disciple's workshop was one of the duties of a mentor. Wraith gave up and told her to stay in her inn as she was already done with today's request. But Lurims was still dedicated to bothering him. Wraith asked her not to wander around too much. Even though she didn't want to, she accepted it. She then asked if he was planning to open a shop. He responded that he was interested, but he was still in the thinking process. As they entered, Lurims forgot everything he told her and started wandering around asking for everything. She started swinging in the hammock after picking and asking about everything and anything. Wraith wondered if she was planning on staying here while she was in the kingdom. She confirmed him, and Wraith realized that he would need to cook for her, deal with her laundry, and clean the unremovable stains again. While his mood became gloomy, she thought he was happy to be able to live with his mentor again. She also asked if he had some alcohol, but Wraith reminded her of his age. Wraith asked where she was all this time. She said that she was gathering ingredients and meeting friends. His mentor was able to use translocation magic, but it uses a large amount of magical energy, so she can't use it consecutively. She then wondered why he was in the capital, and he explained that monsters started showing up around that small house and he ran out of money too, so he wanted to sell potions. It was true that it had been rough ever since he left that house, and now he had been under the pressure of his mentor and the request from the royal family. Wraith decided to eat something, but Lurims didn't get up, saying she couldn't cook. He could not believe she did not know how to cook when she could use both alchemy and magic. It can be said without a doubt that Lurims was utterly unable to cook. The one time Wraith ate Lurims' cooking, he ended up immobilized from the stomachache. She decided to look at the other rooms while he was cooking. Lurims was thinking about how Wraith had grown up. She noticed a room, and when she went inside, the room was so cold. She immediately gets out of the room. She wondered if Sylvia helped with that, as Wraith can't use magic. She went to the last room. It was dim and a little moist, so she thought it was an empty room. But there was something in there. She thought it was a thief, and if it was, she wasn't planning on letting them go. While Wraith was cooking, he heard Lurims' scream and immediately went to find her. She was crying because there were bugs everywhere. Wraith explained that the bugs in this room were really useful because they were able to produce unique threads that could withstand having magic applied to them. It could be used for things like shoes and bags. To cheer her up, Wraith asked her to help him out with something after they had dinner. While eating, Lurims asked about the thing he wanted her to help out. He warned her not to speak while chewing and explained that it was about making a magical device. She was surprised that he couldn't make it, but he said that it required magic so he couldn't do it alone. Lurims proudly told him to leave it to his mentor. Wraith was glad that she was so enthusiastic, but he explained that he didn't need her to use her full power or anything. If she unleashes her full power, the capital won't be here tomorrow. She asked what they were going to make, and he said that it was a bag, the one that uses spatial expansion to fit all sorts of things inside it. All she had to do was apply the spatial magic. He was also hoping that she would lend a hand if anything went wrong. Having a mentor here was as good as having 100 people. He was even using a different method from before to make the bag. He used the thing that made Lurims cream earlier. More precisely, the threads produced by the bugs she saw. Those threads cannot be compared to mithril, and they had magical conductivity and high strength. They were nearly impossible to break with bare hands, and a single thread was capable of supporting the weight of a grown man. He showed the bag where he had inscribed the magic circle into the threads. After making sure there weren't any bugs in the bag, Lurims started the process. When she finished, Wraith questioned if it worked, but Lurims seemed pretty confident. He put something in the bag, and it was confirmed that the bag was working. Lurims expected something rebellious from him, but he comfortably thanked her. Lurims started crying, asking him to bring her out to drink. Wraith reminded her that he was still a minor, but when she told him that he could just drink juice, he did not have any more excuses to reject. In the next scene, Sylvia is in her first magic class with Lurims and Wraith. Lurims asked if she had any requests, and she wondered if she could teach her spatial magic. When Lurims said that she would teach Sylvia magic, she was worried about Sylvia, so he tagged along, but Sylvia looked happy. While he was thinking, Laffy asked Wraith if he was worried, and then told him that Sylvia wasn't that weak. She mentioned how rare it was to be able to get personal tutoring from the hero who saved the city from giant dragons, and it was a shame that she couldn't teach her too, as she was a swordsman. Wraith asked if it would be bad if she got hurt, and she said that of course it would be bad. Lurims suggested starting with translocation magic. This was a very high difficulty magic considered top class among the spatial magics. She told Sylvia to not worry about how difficult it was because she was talented, but she already seemed unenthusiastic. Laffy commented that Lurims decided on that on a whim, and Wraith confirmed that she had always been like that, but he mentioned that she could be trustworthy sometimes too. But Laffy understood that this would mean she could also be untrustworthy sometimes. Lurims started by showing Sylvia how it was done. When she disappeared and popped up in a different location, Sylvia started clapping. It would be unreasonable to tell her to do it straight away, so she decided to let her get a feel of it first. She holds her hands and releases the magic. As Sylvia felt the magic in her hands, it was time to try it right away. Sylvia was confused as she didn't know how to do it, but Lurims snapped her fingers and Sylvia disappeared. As they were shocked and worried, she appeared in the sky, falling right on Wraith. Wraith caught her in time and she was fine. Wraith knew this was Lurim's job, so he scolded her and threatened her that he would put a bug on her pillow tonight when she was about to sleep to make her regret what she did. Lurims asked Sylvia if she grasped the feeling from what she did, and Sylvia confirmed her. She then decided to work from there so she wouldn't forget that feeling. She said that the key was to remain aware of the connection between her target coordinates as she released her magic. They were going to start by translocating small objects such as one of Wraith's potions. She gave the potion to Sylvia and she tried to relocate the potion. She did manage to do it, but she accidentally broke the potion. However, Lurim said that even though there was some collateral damage, the translocation was a success. She added that a normal person wouldn't be able to do it, and now she just needs to focus on the connection part. If she doesn't, then it becomes easy to damage whatever she is translocating. Saliva asked what happens if she translocates a person at the time, and Lurim simply answered that they might end up split into two. And so the magic lesson that day ended with only one successful translocation attempt. Laffy asked when they met, and Lurim said that they first met about 7 years ago. A bunch of things happened after that, and Wraith became her disciple when he was 10. Sylvia said that it was amazing that the two of them met like that, and it was like a meeting of talent. Lurim said that she was acquainted with Wraith's parents to begin with. She never expected that those two would give birth to a child as suited to alchemy as Wraith. Sylvia was confused, so Wraith explained that his parents were adventurers, and they were strong enough to keep up with Lurim's. But as their child, he had no fighting ability. He didn't inherit an ounce of their talent or fighting. Instead, he had a completely unrelated talent for alchemy, and that's why Lurim's took him under her wing instead. He said that he didn't think he would have become Lurim's disciple if he had known about her true nature back then. Sylvia noted that she was so happy when she got to meet Lurim's. Lurims approached the girls and whispered something that made them smirk at Wraith. He asked what she told them, and she told them about how even though his words were so cold, he also had a cute side to him. She told them that Wraith sent her a present every year on her birthday, despite how he acted. He was very sweet. That night, when Wraith came home, everything was a mess and Lurims was holding a bottle of drink. Wraith was trying to figure out how that happened. A few hours ago, Lurims was begging to drink just one bottle, which she claimed wouldn't hurt. Obviously, Wraith refused to let her drink, but she insisted and reminded him that she helped him with the magic bag. He had to accept it, but only with the condition that it would be one bottle when they were having dinner. He had a bad feeling about this even though Lurims wasn't a stranger to drinking. He apologized to Sylvia in advance and then headed to make the dinner. He started cooking, but after a while he heard a loud noise, so he had to come back to the room she was drinking, which brings us to the present. Wraitha asked what happened, and Lafferty explained that Lurims started using her magic all of a sudden. At first glance, the bottle of alcohol still looked intact, but he figured that she used translocation magic to drink it straight from inside the bottle, and she was even using water magic to refill the bottle. Wraith told her to get back to her seat and promised to not blame her for drinking. She obviously denied that she was drunk. Laffy asked what they should do, but before Wraith could answer, a wind started to blow everything in the room. It was Lurims who could use magic even when she was drunk. Normally, magic was something that requires a lot of focus to use, but she was able to activate her magic using just the intuition she had ingrained into her body. Before she destroyed the house, Sylvia tried to nullify her magic and thankfully it worked. She passed out on the ground. Wraith gave her a potion to sober her up. He was now sure that he would never ever let her drink again. Laffy told Wraith to go ahead and take care of her while they cleaned up the place. He thanked Laffy and started dragging Lurims. He had an idea, so he let Lurims rest while he prepared something with rinafruit and sosogi. He was originally planning to test it out first, but he didn't have time for that. Lurims created a lot of trouble for Laffy and Sylvia, so he was hoping this would make for a good apology. He did some alchemist stuff, and then the liquid started growling. It looked like it didn't fail, so he was satisfied. Lastly, he added the sosogi. It was his first time making something other than a potion, but it went smoothly. He went back to the room and it was cleaner than before. He showed them what he just did and said that it was a token of his appreciation. They asked what it was, but he decided to show them. He turned off the lights and the bottle started shining. The girls seemed to like it. When rinafruit is liquefied, it shines with different colors depending on the light source. Sosogi was a plant that absorbed magical energy from the ground and released it as light when it was dark. When you combine them with alchemy, it gives off a really beautiful light which was very popular in the kingdom. They thanked him and had to leave as they still had that direct request business tomorrow. One of the great noble families that existed in the kingdom was the Linford family. They were the descendants of an illustrious herbalist who participated in a war more than 100 years ago. They also had exceptional talent in magic, and were known for their many achievements on the battlefield. In recognition of their accomplishments, they became one of the 4 great noble families of the kingdom. Since then, The Linford family has produced generation after generation of makes and herbalists and protected the land. Seth Linford, the eldest son in the family, was being scolded by his sister Leisha for sighing, as she believed happiness escapes when you sigh. Even if she told him to not be like that, he was still in a gloomy mood. She tried to make him smile and told him that he looked better when he smiled. She asked if he was thinking about Orda. He did think about him, and he was also sad that there wasn't any news. She then asked if that was about what their father spoke earlier about the royal family. Seth didn't answer her, which meant that she was right. Leisha told her big brother that he wanted Seth to succeed in the family, but not at the expense of his happiness. He responded that he wasn't opposed to succeeding the family, and besides, if he were to abandon his role, then his responsibility would fall to Orda. Orda, Seth's younger brother, exceeded his older brother in both herbalist and wizard abilities. As a result, he believes he is a better prospect to lead the family than Seth and harbors enmity toward him. However, succeeding in the family entails inheriting the territory. Therefore, one must excel not just in abilities but also in character. Even though he possessed exceptional abilities, his troubled nature made him far from the perfect option to lead the family. Leisha reminded Seth that their father was thinking about letting him succeed in the family, so there shouldn't be problems if all goes well. He told Leisha that depending on how this business with the royal family goes, even the proper line of succession may be overruled. A short while ago, a direct order from the royal family arrived, and Leisha hadn't heard the contents of the letter, but she knew that there were two people chosen to accomplish the order. Seth was going to try his best, but he also said that it was a fact that Orda had greater abilities than him. If only he was more capable than Orda, they wouldn't be having this problem right now, he said. Leisha tried to explain to him, but he interrupted her, saying that it would be fine and he would come up with something. She really hoped nothing bad would happen. Seth teased his sister and then left to see his father. He feels bad about worrying Leisha so much. As he walked into the hall, he saw Orda. Orda started talking to him with a petty tone and offered to meet their father together. Seth couldn't refuse him, and they started walking. The reason why he couldn't was because no one knew what he would say if he turned him down. As they walked, Orda was talking about how this was an excellent opportunity to show their father which of them was most suited to succeed in the family, while all Seth could think was to study on his own. Meanwhile, at Wraith's house, Lurims woke up falling from where she slept. She looked like an insect to Wraith. She started rubbing her body on Wraith, asking to be taken care of by him. However, whatever she says, Wraith was glaring at her. He told her to complain later and get ready because they were going to the royal castle today. The day they received the direct request from the royal family was finally here. Wraith felt the need to make sure not to give a bad impression. On the other hand, seemed pretty comfortable, but Wraith scarily smiled at her, reminding her that they were running late again because of her. Before she got ready, she thought about how naggy Wraith was and missed his old cute self. With one snap of a finger, she was ready to go. She wanted to get breakfast, but Wraith said that there was no time for that, and if she needed someone to blame, she should blame herself. Lurims was whining while they were walking on the street as she was hungry, but Wraith ignored her and asked how familiar she was with the royal family. She said that she got rid of those giant dragons for them, so he had a lot of leeway. Sounded convenient to Wraith, but she explained that they didn't want her to cut them off so they could use her. She left this kingdom because it would be a pain to stick around doing their chores. He didn't know she had all that going on. She started giggling and warned him to be careful as her disciple. She said that from the kingdom's perspective, they would already have figured out that she was a free-spirited type, and they knew it was really hard to get hold of her to ask for things. With that in mind, the next thing they would have their eye on would be her disciple. In other words, Wraith might end up getting lots of requests in her place from now on. Wraith didn't want to be her gopher. They walked enough to see the castle. Lurims started running as they might have lots of things to eat when they got there. Wraith tried to stop her, but it was useless. She was just like a kid. There was a possibility that they might not prepared food for them, which could make her angry. When they arrived at the gate, Wraith was shocked at how huge it was. The soldiers came and stopped them from getting in, but when they showed the letter they got from the royal family, they apologized right away and showed them the way. While walking, Lurims mentioned that the dragons were about as big as this castle. Wraith was shocked, but then someone bumped into him. It was Orda, and he called them plebeians. Lurims was furious and questioned what was his problem. As they didn't know him, Wraith wondered if that person was also called to the castle. Lurims said that this was not his fault because he already apologized and he still shoved him on purpose. The maids came and apologized for making them wait. Wraith had a bad feeling about all this. They went inside the room and saw both Seth and Orda waiting. Wraith was confused that they were putting them in the same waiting room as nobles, and the guy from earlier was here too. Lurims couldn't care less about them and only focused on how hungry she was. Seth stood up and approached them. He smiled and introduced himself and then offered some snacks. They thanked him and introduced themselves too. Seth wondered what business they had, and Wraith responded that he was Lurim's disciple, and he was here to accept a request. Seth guessed that Wraith was just like them. Both he and his younger brother Orda over there were here on the orders from the royal family. This made Orda laugh, and he told Seth that respectable nobles such as them shouldn't be mingling with the common fold. Doing so would call their prestige into question. Seth snapped and told him that this was none of his business, but he didn't seem bothered by Seth's words. Wraith could see that they weren't getting along very well, but all he wanted was actually to go home. The preparations were all done and they were ready to enter. However, they were shocked to see Orda appearing in the middle of them, excusing himself. Seth apologized for his brother's behavior. They entered the room and the father of the royal family told them to raise their heads and be at ease. Lurimis greeted Velber like he was her closest friend, asking if he had gotten older. After rumbling for a second, Velber said that not even he could win against age. Lurims asked why he called them here and she was sure he didn't want to have a friendly chat. Velber said that the two Linfords here already knew why they were here, and he decided to explain to Lurims and her disciple who were still in the dark. He only had one request, which was the recovery of the symbol of this country, the crystal dragon. The dragon had been worshipped as the symbol of this kingdom for over 300 years, and it was an extremely rare dragon with the ability to produce crystals. He wanted them to save that dragon. Normally its crystals do not crack or discolor, but recently they have begun deteriorating and taking on a dark hue. Even now its body was slowly shrinking. Lurims wanted to confirm that he wanted them to heal this crystal dragon. While Lurims was saying that she couldn't guarantee they would be able to heal it, Orda stepped up and told the king to not worry. He promised to heal this dragon for him. Lurimis didn't like how he was talking big, so she said that her disciple over here would definitely be able to do it too. The king was surprised because Wraith was pretty young. Lurim said that this wouldn't be a problem because Wraith was far more capable than the kiddo over there. Wraith told her not to raise the hurdle for him and promised the king to do his best not to disappoint. Lurims decided to get down to business and asked if anything like that had ever happened before. The king has not been able to confirm any past cases like that. She asked the king to tell them what it normally eats, where it spends its time, and so on. He responded that it eats only metals and usually spends time with his daughter going out in the yard and around the castle. Wraith wanted to take a closer look. The dragon seemed a little uneasy, but it stood still. Wraith used his analysis to see and examine the dragon pretty closely. From his reaction to something, the king asked if he had figured out something. He said that looking at those dark discolorations, it was probably many tiny metals inside the crystal. The king said that the crystal dragon should be completely digesting the metals within its body. Wraith explained that it was either that it wasn't digesting the metals, or that something was happening after it was digested. Either way, he said that the dragon's insides were being clogged. The dissolved metals were normally carried to the surface of the body through its vessels, but now edible metals were blocking those vessels. And then the dissolved metals that come after that would not be able to pass through properly. As a result, he believed that the flow of fluids in its vessels had been halted and was causing a buildup. He then asked if the crystal dragon had been consuming metals as usual recently, and the king said that it wasn't. This could be instinctively feeling a danger to its life and senses, that any further buildup of fluid could very well cause its vessels to burst. In human terms, it must be as painful as bursting your blood vessels. Wraith felt so bad for the dragon and promised to find a way to save it. The king asked if he had any ideas to heal it, and he said that he could try one of the ideas he had thought of right now. The king allowed him to do that, and Wraith approached the dragon. At first, dragon didn't let him touch itself, so he tried to calm it down by saying he was going to save it. He used transform magic on the dragon. Unlike magic, alchemy works on the practitioner's existing material and has to do with the power of influence. With that power, it may be possible to remove the metals inside the dragon's crystals. Of course, this skill had limits, but Wraith's influence was stronger than Lurimis's. Unfortunately, this idea didn't work on the dragon. Wraith should have known it wouldn't be that simple. Lurims suggested thinking of something else. Wraith apologized to King and stated that this was all he could do for now and they were going to come back at a later date when they found a way to resolve this. Before they left the castle, Orda warned him to not get ahead of himself. Seth came and wanted to negotiate with him. In the next chapter, Lurims brought Seth and Wraith to a local place to eat something as she was starving. After eating, Seth asked Wraith to lend him his aid. Wraith was confused, so he asked if he meant he wanted credit for it. Seth corrected him that he was fine with him being the one to complete the request, but the one thing he wanted to avoid was his brother being the one to complete it. Wraith was fine with anyone as long as they could get it done, as the request was for the country's symbol. Seth said that if it was from the royal family, it didn't matter who completed the request, but for him, it was a personal matter. He explained that he was the eldest son of a family that had been considered the top among the noble families. By the proper line of succession, he would be the one to succeed the family. Lurimes knew that they were one of the great noble families known for their herbalists, and they hated her. Seth confirmed that Lurimes was a good alchemist to practically invalidate the existence of herbalists, so in a sense she was their competitor. Back to the issue at hand, depending on the outcome of this request, the successor of the family might just become his younger brother, which is what he was trying to avoid at all costs. That's why he wanted to cooperate with him. Wraith thought about it for a second and agreed to take him up on that. This was not a bad deal because he could have more funds for his shop, and unlike Orda, Seth was pleasant and humble. But there was one thing he was curious about. He asked why he was aiming to take over the family. Seth explained that his younger sister wanted this, and he also didn't want to leave things to Orda's hands. They sat next to him, teasing him for being cute. Seth got embarrassed, so Wraith told him that it was a respectable reason. He also mentioned that he was easy to talk to for a noble. It was true that he tried not to give a standoffish impression, but even so, Seth wondered if he didn't feel the need to be more reserved. He said that he didn't have any experience dealing with people of high status like the Our Great families, but if someone was nice to him, he would want to be friendly with them regardless of their status. As for Seth, he had always lived bound by his status. Regardless of how he felt, others would always reinforce his status on him. That's why he was glad to meet someone like him. They shook hands as he told him that he was looking forward to working with him. Now it was time to discuss their plans. Wraith asked what he knew about the Crystal Dragon, and he said that the Crystal Dragon wasn't even something that the nobles have the chance to see normally, so he didn't have any more information than him. Wraith also didn't have any concrete plans for now. Lurimes stated that it would be great if she could try a few experiments, but that would not be possible as they were dealing with the country's symbol. The problem was finding out about those metals. Metals that the Crystal Dragon can't dissolve, or that return to their former state after being dissolved. He asked Seth if there was anywhere in the kingdom where liquid metals were handled. If they could find a liquid metal that could change its state easily, it might be able to meet the conditions he mentioned earlier. And to find out more, they would need to go somewhere that handles liquid metals that were in circulation in the kingdom. He looked at Lurimes, but she only knew where to get a drink in this city. Wraith thought about who would work with liquid metals and then had an idea. Lurimes asked if he had someone, but Wraith was sure it would be bad if Lurimes and that person met. He started brainstorming, which made Lurimes annoyed. She told them to go right now, and they started going somewhere. Lurimes took them to a girl who seemed so excited to see Lurimes. She couldn't even believe she was seeing her. Her name was Nicola, but Lurimes didn't remember her at first. However, after a second she told her that she was the one who nursed her when she was drunk all those years ago. Wraith was about to leave there in embarrassment. He said that they came here today because they were doing a request that required them to look into liquid metals. Nicola seemed to think something was up, but that was inevitable if they had a noble and an alchemist taking on the same request. She said that she knew about several places, so she asked if they were looking for anything specific. He asked if any metals change easily between solid and liquid form. When he touched the crystals of the dragon, he felt a warmth, as if there was blood flowing inside it. If the surface was already that warm, the inside must be even warmer, he assumed. Nicola heard that a new type of liquid metal was imported recently from the south. Wraith guessed that its name was silverite, and he was right. But she said that not much of it was imported, so there wasn't anything left. Seth said that even knowing that was a big help as he could pass the word to his family and have them procure it. Wraith said that it wouldn't work. To start with, just getting silverite was a matter of luck. Silverite was only found in volcanic areas, and it was also found near another metal that looked practically identical to it and can't be told apart normally. Since silverite was a liquid metal, you could find it by looking at its liquid form when the volcano was not active. But on the volcanoes where there was silverite, there were spirits. Spirits dwell within natural phenomena, and they could only be seen by magic with high magical aptitude. So those spirits were also able to influence the activity of the volcano. Nicola was sorry about not being able to help them more, but Wraith said that she had helped them a lot. He also wanted her to help them out looking for any remaining silverite still in the kingdom. He also said that in exchange, they would let her have Lurimes. Hearing this, Nicola accepted to help them pretty willingly. Wraith told Seth to try to procure some through his family too, or confirm whether the royal family still had any left. 5 days passed and they had nothing. Wraith asked once again if they found anything. Seth tried to procure some, but it was to no avail, and the royal family did not have any left over either. Nicola couldn't get any either. Wraith decided to get it from the source, but even if they go there, it would be difficult to tell it apart from the look-alike metal even with his analysis. He asked if Lurimes could cool down the silverite with magic, but there was no way she could. She said that it might work in a place without spirits around, but she wouldn't want to mess with them as they were so powerful. But she said that she could do it if she got their permission to use her magic. Wraith was shocked that she could talk to them. She said that sometimes the spirits of the larger natural phenomena were intelligent and it would be nice if they were friendly. Otherwise, they might end up getting burnt to a crisp. It looked like their best bet was to talk to the spirits. Wraith asked if she could win against them if they got on their bad side, and Lurims was negative. Then it looked like he would have to do something about it. He said that if his mentor can't win against them, they would have to make a magical device that could win against them, specifically a device for increasing magical energy, and he would also make a ring that could amplify magical power. Lurims informed Wraith that she didn't know any magic circle to do that. Wraith explained that it was something new he came up with while she was gone, and he was sure she would be able to make it on easily too. Lurims denied, saying that a complicated magic circle like that was too much even for her, and he was the one who could make something like that. In the next scene, Wraith was going to start the process. He couldn't use magic himself, so it was a big help for Seth and Lurims to be here to help him test them out. He took out a scarlet crystal, which was not an alchemical material. Wraith explained that it was perfect for magical strengthening. He started drawing the circle, but Seth had a bad feeling about this. Wraith asked who would like to try it first when he finished, and Seth didn't seem so willing. Lurims went ahead first. Seth asked if that was going to be okay. Wraith said that it was just emitting light, so it wasn't like it could hurt anyone. The moment Lurims touched the circle, their eyes shone because of how big the light was. That is the end of the recap for now. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.